In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. Deep means ocean, sea. You understand? And the Spirit of God moved across the face of the waters, which means this ocean, the sea that we are inside, there is a surface to that. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. That's not the sun. That there was a light before the sun. The sun did not come until 4 days later. It had not been created. And God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. Now I'm understanding that this is not here. This is not here. This is someplace else. This is above the surface, perhaps. And God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters." A firmament. Right there. Firmament. That's the vault that they refer to. It's a shell. It's a glass shell. And let it divide the waters from the waters. Okay? You understand? So what you're looking at is something like this. So understanding that Genesis is explaining to you something like this, where it's actually hollow on the inside. It has the firmament, just like that, and that it's underwater. Understanding that this is certainly a possibility, that this is what Genesis is describing. This is nothing like what NASA tells you. And every year, NASA gives you a new Earth, because they're not real. How can Africa change so drastically? From 2007, it's almost brown. In 2013, because they're photoshopped. They're photoshopped. 1975 is a painting. They painted it. That's all that is. There are pictures that were taken from a round airplane window, and they told you that was Earth. That if there is any truth to what the Bible says, and if this is in fact what you're dealing with, then there are no space shuttles that get out of that. There are no rockets that go into space. And there are no planets that are floating around out there. We'll get to those in a minute. But understand, Genesis tells you it's underwater, and the water's separate from the waters. Now, let's talk about Libyan desert glass. They say the firmament is glass, and that when the Great Flood happened, it shattered. All those cities, those ancient cities that were built on the seas, on sea level, they're all underwater now. They're underwater. Because once the water comes into the firmament, they can't get the water back out, so it stayed. And we'll discuss how they fixed it later. But right now, we're going to move on to the Libyan desert glass, because I actually have a piece. I can't find it, but I've got one somewhere. And I'll show you what that is. This is Libyan desert glass. It's a very strange composite that was discovered in the deserts of Libya. I actually do have my own piece, as this is said to be the firmament. And I know this to be true because of who I know and who I talk to. But the reality is, there is a glass shell between us and the outer space, so to speak. And if this is what's blocking us from the outside water, then regardless of what is past the firmament, there are no space shuttles that can go out there, because this is glass. Now, I've been told with my piece that chances are it might not be real. Now, Libyan desert glass is the firmament from the Great Flood where it cracked, which would be the Milky Way, a patch that they put on it. We'll get to that later. But the only way for me to know if my piece is legitimately real is to take a torch to it, because this was created by an immense amount of heat from a volcanic reaction. Volcano. So once you comprehend that, you realize this place is not a ball floating in space like your masters want you to believe. That it is in fact a place underwater. That this is the shell, the dome, the firmament, the vault. And that when it cracked, it shattered and these pieces fell to earth. In the old days, old days, there were many cities that used to be at sea level, which are now underwater. Because when the firmament cracked and the water started pouring in, it was those cities that got flooded out. And although they couldn't remove the water when they patched the hole, when the gods patched the hole, when the angels patched the hole, when the UFO patched the hole, the water still remains here to this day, and those cities are still submerged. So let's talk about the water. If above us is a water, an ocean, a sea, even a lake, how is it we have freshwater lakes and saltwater oceans? It's very simple. They added the salt, because salt conducts electricity. Salt is an electric conductor between 2 points, a generator and the output, which could be a light, could be just about anything. But the electric, such as ocean currents, electric currents, will travel from one point to another through the water without wire. And that being said, that is how the stars operate. The stars are not in space. They're suspended. They were hung there. They were placed there. And every so often, they fall down. And we'll show you some pictures here in a minute of that. But I want you to see that this is in fact a real thing. That salt water conducts electricity, which is why it's there, and why the lakes are freshwater. They never added water. They never added salt to the fresh water. So when you look at the stars at night, and you see them flicker, and they flicker and flicker and flicker, it doesn't matter which one you look at, they all flicker a little differently. What is it you're really looking at? Do you even know? I know what your government tells you. It's the sun reflecting off of them, right? Because they're all out in space and they orbit each other. It's all a bunch of bullshit. The stars are on a mobile system, like what you would hang over a baby's crib. It's a lot like that. And once you understand what these things are, it'll change your perspective on everything. The stars are not planets floating in space. They are spheres, metal balls, that produce plasma. It's high voltage electricity. We have the same thing here on Earth. As you can see, they have all different kinds of colors they show off. Blue and pink and orange and yellow and red and white. It's because it's high voltage electricity. And you can see that when a power plant starts to melt down or a transformer starts to blow. That is what it is. It isn't gases. It's not sunlight reflecting off of them. It's high voltage electricity. Because somewhere on Earth there is a huge ancient generator that pushes electricity through the currents of the ocean. And that is what sends these stars their electricity. It's a plasma reaction, kind of like microwave plasma. And I'll show you some examples of that in a minute.
Я выпрыгнул оттуда. Слышь, я тоже лихо доебнул. А ебал я в рот.
Okay, so the stars are metal balls, and they're suspended by the firmament. They both have a similar construction, two halves put together. Most likely they are filled with some sort of a gas, which when you add electricity to it, they will create a reaction. And every so often, these break loose, and I can only comprehend that when they break loose, that gas ignites and they shoot across the sky, which is why they say comets. You can see many examples of them. They have melt marks on them because of extreme plasma heat. Some of them even have heat shields, and these heat shields are probably to protect the firmament. They're held up on the firmament by what would be like a mobile system, like what you would put up above a playpen of your child, and it just kind of hangs. Each one is a little different than the other, and some of the heat shields are a little bit different, but you have to keep in mind they're thousands and thousands of years old. So when you think of your gods, you're not thinking of them in a technological sense. There's nothing paranormal about this. There. The generator produces electricity. The electricity goes to the ocean. The ocean powers the stars. The stars are a power source for the UFO, so that they don't ever have to come down. They can hide behind the sun where you can't see them. Let's talk about the generator. Okay, the way the generator is explained to me is it's toxic but necessary. And that's where the aurora borealis comes from. It is up north, but the reality is, when you try to understand how direction works, you literally can circumnavigate in a complete circle. And it seems like you're going around the world, but really you're just going in a circle, because north is always north. So for you to be able to find out where this thing is coming from, you would literally just have to follow where the aurora goes. And there are certain points where you're just not going to be able to go any farther, I assume. There is no video that far north. Nothing that's public. But there are other places out there. There are other worlds. That's where these people are. That's where a lot of other civilizations are. I've been told of at least 2 other colonies, two other civilizations. And I'm not talking about just like a country, but like a world. If you start thinking about how everything is 33 and 66, that's 33.3%, 66.6%, that's 100%. If we are only 33% of this world, that means there is so much more out there that we are just not allowed to go to. There is no Antarctica. You start going that far south, you hit the rim, the volcanic rim of the crater. That's what people don't understand, is that there is no Antarctica. They show you penguins, sure, but that rim goes around the entire thing. And it is dangerous, I'm sure. That's where it's the coldest, is right there by the water. You start going up higher in altitude. That's the reason why the stars don't just burn up, is because that far up in the atmosphere, there's no oxygen, which means these stars don't just catch fire. They can just flicker and flicker and flicker, because there's no way they can actually ignite. And people have demonstrated the similar thing in a vacuum tube. So let's move on, because I can't really show you a picture of the generator. I don't really have one. All I know is that is what I'm told the aurora borealis is from it. Now, there are ancient maps that show farther up north. Whether they're legit or not, whether they're real, I can't tell you that. But there are many maps out there in the world that are claimed to be very, very old, and other civilizations out there. I can only tell you what I understand and what I know. And it's pretty intense the more you think about the way things are. The NASA and the bullshit about the Mars rover, it's a lie. The Mars rovers, they take those videos in Alaska. They take it in the Arabian desert. They take it right here in our deserts. At your expense. They're laughing at you. The moon landing was just a Walt Disney hoax. And people buy into it. Now the moon is something else, but it's not something you can land on. It's a hologram. There are many things that I wish I just had the ability to show you. I can try and simulate the sun for you, so that maybe you can understand what is going on with the sun. Okay, so in order to give you an idea of how the sun works, I'm going to use a lamp. It's basically the shape of a bell. That's my understanding of it. And I don't have a lot of battery life on my phone, so I'm going to try and do this as quickly as possible. But when the sun rises, it's pointing to the west, because it just sets somewhere. And it rises up in the air, and it does this motion. As the day progresses, this would be 12 o'clock noon. This would be towards, 4, 5, 6. And as you see, the bottom of the light, right? The bottom of the light will slowly turn. And then it just disappears. And now it's rising for somebody else, somewhere else. That's how it works. And it doesn't go in a complete circle like this. It rises, and then sets somewhere else. But it will turn. That's why you can watch it disappear, but it never actually touches the ground. That's how the sun works. It's basically the shape of a bell. And I can show you all kinds of gematria on that, but we're not doing a gematria video today. This is what this is. It rises over here, and then all of a sudden it peaks and it comes over 12 o'clock noon, and then as it sets, it starts to pivot again. And then it disappears. You can't see it because, well, there's a shell. You see? But somebody else is getting it. And then it rises. And so on. That's how that works. Now what I've noticed about the lunar wave is each time it goes across the moon, I can almost see the moon shift its position just ever so slightly. Now we might only be able to catch a major one every now and then, but I'm more than certain that they are happening all the time. Now what the moon is, I don't know. It could be a base, it could be a Death Star, it could be a number of different things. But what I'm certain of is that what's covering it is a hologram. I don't think there's any denying it. That when you see that ripple go across, it does ever so slightly shift position. There are other different examples like Crow 777. He caught the first ones, and they are pretty compelling when you start to understand what it is you're dealing with. You look at the world as natural. You start looking at it the way I do. None of it is natural. Absolutely none of it. Not the sun, not the moon, not the stars, not even the salt water. Everything was invented. Everything was created. It kind of takes the mystery out of how we got here. We were put here. It's that simple. Now, I wanted to correct myself. I didn't make myself very clear when I said the sun goes in a circle. I said the sun didn't go in a circle. It absolutely does, but it goes in a circle in a sine wave. When you hear when they say Jesus died for your sins, it is the Son of God, S-U-N, Son of God. Sins is also sine wave. That's how the sun goes up and down in a complete circle. The word died doesn't necessarily mean something died or somebody died. It also means out and away. Now both the sun, the moon, and the stars are within the firmament. They're not out in space. There is no space. And even with all the NASA nonsense that they give you pictures of Martian rovers and walrus bones and prairie dogs. And people start uncovering the photographs and they find 57 Chevys buried out in the sand and old boats and this and that. These are the pictures that they're giving the public, and nobody actually thinks about it. Oh, maybe it's a Martian boat. Maybe it's a Martian 57 Chevy. Yeah, okay, sure. But the Challenger explosion from 1986, a lot of us still remember that. Every astronaut is still alive. They're astronauts, because it's all a sham. It's a hoax to keep you guessing, to keep you wanting to know more, that you buy into their science fiction bullshit and you watch their fucking movies like the Apollo, and people want to believe so much that they will literally pay for it. Years ago they had a big thing with the Rosetta Comet. They claimed that the comet was going through, and they actually somehow miraculously were able to send a lander, the Philae lander, to the Rosetta Comet with the Osiris camera. Philae is an island in Egypt. Rosetta would be referring to the Rosetta Stones, which tell you to look at your masters as gods in 3 different languages. And that this little clay ball that they gave the Americans, or the world, as a real comet, it's just an insult how many people buy it, how many people believe it, that they can't even look at that and think that it represents Philae Island. They don't even know. They don't get it. But it's obvious, it's right there in your face, and that's what the government does. They put these things in your face and then they laugh at you because you believe them. Right. Earth is a volcano. Everything that's inside this volcano, it's a complex crater. A complex crater is like a simple crater, but it has land masses within it. And being how this was originally underwater, and then the firmament pushed the water out, that there was still some water in it, which creates the continents. Now, we only have 7 continents that we know of, or at least 6 that we know of, and then allegedly Antarctica, which we can't prove one way or the other, because you're not allowed to just go out there any more than you're allowed to go up north. You try to go up north and chances are you're going to be stopped. But this place is a lot bigger than what they let us know. And there's a lot more going on here than they will ever tell you. Earth, this world that we have right here, this section of it, it is a complex crater. But it is also volcanic. And if you watch some of my other videos, you'll see a possibility of how Genesis actually started. The real Genesis, I believe it's called. And there's other videos too. There's the Search for Hell. And that, I believe, is what was responsible for the Milky Way, the firmament cracking. Because the heat from the volcano was too much that it cracked the firmament, and the UFO had to repair it, which are the archangels, by the way. The UFO are the archangels. I wish I had a better camera. I really do. But I hope this helps a lot of you out. I hope you figure out exactly what's going on. I hope this definitely gives you some insight if you didn't know anything about it before. All these things that I'm showing you, they are provable to a point. And sometimes you just have to take the leap of faith, because I don't have any way to prove there's a generator, but there must be. Because the salt water in the oceans and the stars, and it does all add up. And people can believe whatever they want. I'm not saying that I'm right or wrong. What I'm going to say is that I know I'm not 100% wrong. Even if I'm not 100% right, I am not 100% wrong. And that these are the things that we already do know. And satellites, yes, satellites do exist. But they are not in outer space, and they are not all ours. Some of them, yes, but not all of them. That is how they can track us. That's one of many ways they can track us. They are a UFO, after all. They can just track us. Are there grays? I have no idea. I've never seen one. Possible. There could be all kinds of different people out there. We don't know. And until somebody comes down and shakes my hand, the Grim Reaper is an archangel. It is only a matter of time. I can go out at night and I can walk down the street and I can see one going across the sky. And usually you'll see them just cruising, and a lot of the times they might just be a satellite because they're hard to tell the difference. But sometimes I can think to them and they'll stop. They'll stop moving and they will come towards me very, very carefully because they heard me. And maybe one day I'll be able to show videos of that, but I can't do it on my cell phone. It doesn't pick up stars or anything. Anyway, thank you for wasting your time on my video. I hope you learned something, and maybe you'll have a better understanding. And go pay Emily a visit. Go check out her site. She's got an amazing channel. She works really hard for her footage, and she is very beautiful. Thank you. Last thing. Like, comment, and subscribe. And one last thing. Go check out Wide Awake. Wide Awake puts out some really great footage on Flat Earth and rethinking everything. Rethinking. Why did he change his name? Rethinking It All. Look him up. And if you can't find him, just go to Wide Awake. They know each other. Go check them out, because they're just average guys who have a passion for looking at the stars and trying to document as much scientific evidence as they possibly can. They're not working for government officials. They're not working for Flat Earth Society. They're just doing them. and they are right on by my book. So if you're really interested in this type of stuff, you should check them out. Thank you. Last thing. Like, comment, and subscribe.